Hey guys, thanks for joining me today. I'm Mark, this is Spiguyver Backpacking, and this channel is all about backpacking, hiking, hammock camping. And today one of the things I wanted to talk about was something that, well, it's come up quite a bit. People have asked me, what are my tips? What are kind of my hacks, the things that I do when I go out hammock camping that make it easier, make it more enjoyable, and make sure that I have the perfect hang and the perfect trip each and every time. And so that's what we're gonna do today. I'm gonna give you guys my best tips. My best tips or hacks or techniques, whatever it is. I'll give you a couple of different versions of some of them. So why don't we jump into this with my first tip, and that's how to select the right two trees, get the distance right the first time without having to keep guessing, going to a couple of trees, figuring out they aren't right, having to find another set of trees. Let's make sure that we can figure out the right set of trees the first time, every time. Okay, so you found your camp area for the night. You've dropped your pack against a tree and you're looking around and you're trying to figure out what set of trees is gonna be the right ones to hang from. Well, you wanna make sure that they're at least 6 inches wide is probably about where you want to be, that when you grab them they're not going to flex too much. But the distance between the trees is really the important piece that you're looking for. The wider you go, the further between the trees, the higher you're going to have to put your suspension. But if you go too short, you may not be able to hang your hammock, and you may not be able to hang your tarp. If your tarp is longer than your hammock, then you need to make sure that you account for that as well. So I've got an area over here and I've been looking at some trees and I think I've got 2 good trees. So there are 2 ways that I use, and I've shown these in the past, but let's see. So I think that tree and this tree look good. So what I'll do is I'll actually stand right in between them and put my poles out. And if my poles almost touch the trees but are a little bit short of touching the trees, I'm pretty close. If you don't hike with poles, my poles are at 120. I've got a pretty good wingspan, so that puts me at about the 12 to 13 foot width, which is what I'm looking for. The other way is if I go to one set of trees and I do 3 full paces. 1, 2, 3. That gives me a pretty good idea that that is the spacing I want. So now that I've found my 2 trees, let's get a hammock hung up, and I'll show you guys the easiest way to do that in tip 2, how to hang it right. All right, so I've selected the trees and I've got my suspension. And so how do I know how high to go? So I usually will go right about head level. If I've gone just about that 12 feet, which is that 3 paces for me, or wingspan plus my poles, just about head height is perfect for getting that height set for me. So I'm gonna go right about here. Now I don't use, for the most part, I don't use carabiners or any hardware. I just wrap my strap around, make sure that it's flat against the tree, and that one's done. I'll hang up the other one and then we'll get the hammock strung up. All right, so if you've got your hammock, I use a double-ended stuff sack. Makes it real easy. Make sure it never has to hit the ground. But if you do, you wanna make sure that you have some way to identify your head and your foot end. Today I'm using a netless hammock that is symmetrical, so it does not matter which side is which. I use what's called the Beckett hitch. And so I just put my webbing through and I create a Beckett hitch onto one of my continuous loops. I then undo this end of my double-ended stuff sack. I grab the continuous loop on the other side and I just walk it over to my other suspension. Here, I again run the webbing through, create my Beckett hitch, and now it's attached. So now I just kind of get the hammock set up. One of the things you're looking for, a quick reference to figure out whether or not you've got it hung about right, is to do a little gun. So if you make the little finger pistol, the angle between your thumb and your finger is about a 30-degree angle, which is what you want your suspension to be at. And so if you stand back and put it against it, it should be pretty close if you've got it about right. So that looks about right. This should put me about the right height. I will need to make some adjustments as I go. So let's sit in it and see how high it is. Okay, not a bad height. This is a good height for me. So I knew that with the width that I had, if I went about head level, I'd get to a good sitting position, which is something I really like having when I'm in a hammock. Okay, so let's talk about the Beckett hitch real quick. So the way that I did it, let me just show you guys. I have my continuous loop and I ran the webbing through the continuous loop. So you can see it's here. And now I can use this to adjust up or down wherever I want it. And once I have it where I want it, I kind of pinch it off. I make a loop. I then put it through the loop. So it comes through itself and pull it up and then just tighten it. Now, I've had a lot of questions about drip lines. So tip number 3 is about drip lines. So this Beckett hitch here is actually one of the only suspension types, the ways of connecting your continuous loop to a webbing strap, that is a perfect drip line. But what I'll also do is take this end that's just hanging here, and I will come up and I will just make another knot in here midway between the Beckett hitch that I've got and the hammock body, so that if any water does come down, happens to get past, which, so Derek Hansen wrote the Ultimate Hang 2, and he has mentioned that this is the best for a water break. But just in case, if it gets past, I've now got my webbing strap as another knot. It's not gonna get past both of them. I make sure that everything's hanging down, it's not touching my hammock, so that if it was to get waterlogged, it's not gonna get onto my hammock. But what this does is it prevents water coming down your strap from continuing down and getting onto here. You've got 2 water breaks, should not make it to your hammock and get wet. I have never had an issue with my hammock getting wet in rain at any point. Now you can also take drip lines, just paracord or whatever, and tie them onto your continuous loops, and that will also serve as a water break. But if you do it this way, this gets it done without having to have anything extra added on there. And if they fall off or you forget them at home, well, you always have your suspension to hang your hammock, so you've got a water break. A lot of questions always come up surrounding your ridge line and how tight it should be. Some people think it should be completely taut, which if you get it tight, your hang is always gonna lay the same below it. But there is a certain tightness that you're looking for. That 20-degree angle usually gets you pretty close. And so you may want to make some adjustments after you get it set up. So I don't like to check it while I'm laying in it. It's a little bit loose, or when I'm sitting in it. It's a little bit loose when I'm sitting in it. So I like to lay in it. So I'll get into my hammock, and now it's tightened up. And what you want to be able to do is grab it, and I like to be able to create like a 45-degree angle. If I can do that, then it's good. If I can go all the way to a 90 or even beyond, or I can't move it at all, it's either too tight or too loose. And so I will get out and I will loosen my Beckett hitch, slide it out or tighten in order to get it right. Now, in order to get the right lay in a hammock, you want to be pretty flat, but a lot of people want to be a little bit further to the head end. And so in order to do that, people will raise their foot end anywhere from a couple of inches to 6-8 inches higher than their head end. It's all personal preference. I like mine a little bit flatter, maybe slightly higher on the foot end, and I'll adjust that after I'm in it and I get a feel for it. Right here, right now, this feels pretty good to me. So I've got a nice ridge line. Like I said, if that wasn't right, if it was too loose and I could go past 90, I would tighten up one of the ends. If I like my foot end a little bit higher, I'd go to the foot end, tighten that up a little bit, make sure that it's right. If it was already too tight and I needed to loosen a side, if I like my foot end higher, I'd loosen the head end and let it down a little bit, get it to where it needs to be, and then be ready to go. I carried a lot of weight with me on the last trip that we did, the Tahoe Rim Trail through hike attempt that didn't go well because of the fires in California, but I carry usually a pretty lightweight pack. On that trip, because of all of the camera gear I was carrying, I carried a little bit more than I normally do. And so if you use the tip that I said, getting it set up right, when you're sitting in your hammock, it should be so that you're naturally sitting, like it feels comfortable and you're at a good height. The tip that I'm gonna give you now is keep the extra weight of a chair or anything else that you might sit on out of your pack if you're carrying a hammock. Because if you're hiking all day and you get to camp, you can set up your hammock and now you have a nice chair. Even if you have a tarp overhead, use your trekking poles, set it up in porch mode, have a nice open area out in front of you, and you can sit here, you can cook, you can do whatever you want. Certain areas, cooking's probably not the smartest thing to do in your tarp, near your hammock, but for a lot of areas, it is just completely fine. Almost all the areas I go, there is no problem with just sitting here and cooking. I can sit here if I've got other friends that are hammocking as well. Set up kind of close by and you can just sit in your hammocks and talk. Rather than pulling up a chair, carrying an extra pound plus of weight, you've got a built-in chair right here with you. And you know, you can lean back in this thing. You can really lounge just kind of in a sitting position. It's almost like you've got a recliner here. If you want to lay down, you just kick your legs up and now you're in your hammock and you can lay down if you want to go to sleep, if you want to read a book. There's a lot you can do with a hammock that keeps you from having to carry extra weight of carrying a chair with you. And for me, this is great. This height, also, another thing that you can do is if I'm laying in my hammock from here, if I get up in the morning and I want a cup of coffee, I can go grab my bear bag, pull some coffee out, and do just coffee or even breakfast right from the hammock. Lay here, get it done, never have to get up. I've still got quilts over me. It's nice. It's nice to be able to do that. I've heard a lot of people who are concerned with what to do with their backpack while they're hammock camping. Now, I usually just leave mine underneath my hammock. If I've got a tarp up, it's completely it's covered. There's no issue. Normally, even the ground underneath you, unless you're on a slope and it's raining really hard, there isn't a lot of wetness underneath you. So mine usually just lays on the ground. If you're not comfortable with that and you would rather have it up off the ground, take your foot end, take any connector on your pack that makes sense for you, connect it on there. Now, right now you can see it pulled this end down, but this weight, while it's pretty packed right now, I've got a lot of stuff in my backpack. When I'm ready for bed, there's not a ton in my backpack. I've got my bear bag with my food hung. I've got the quilts on the hammock. I've got the hammock itself hung up. I've usually got electronics and stuff in the hammock with me. And so this pack is actually usually pretty light at that point. But even with it as heavy as it is, I'm gonna lay in this hammock. And you can see when, before I put it up, it was sitting, I don't know, right about there. It's about 30 degrees. So when I get back in, let's see where it comes to. Okay, so I'm about to sit. And when I go to lay, look at that. It comes right up to where it should be. My ridge line is good. And my pack is up off the ground. If I'm worried about anything on the ground getting into my pack, now I don't need to. All right, this next tip is really a product. Something that I recommend anybody who hammock camps go ahead and get. I think everyone that I end up backpacking with uses one, and I've even found ways on those rare occasions I have to go to ground and I use my duplex. I've actually put a string in my duplex so that I can use it, and that is the hang time hook. So the hang time hook is a pull device that goes right on your ridge line like this, and what it's used for is to hold your phone. And so it's got this clamping system. Your phone goes in there and you can adjust the angle of it when you're laying in here and the ridge line is tight. It makes it easy to adjust it. You can slide it to where you can lay in here and you know, if you read, you can have a book on here and you don't have to hold it. If you're into watching movies or you downloaded a TV series you want to watch, you've got it on there and you can just watch it. It's got some little clips on here so you can actually hang a battery bank from it, and that offsets it a little bit so that it doesn't wobble as much. You can run your cord through here so that it's You've got a little bit of cord management right there. And so this becomes a really cool entertainment system while you're out on the trail. I like it. Well, there you go, guys. Those are some of my top tips to get the most out of your next hammock camping adventure. Get out there, give it a try. If you have things that you found that make life easier, make hammock camping just a more enjoyable experience, let me know what they are. These were my tips for today. I hope you guys enjoy them. I hope you get something out of them. If you haven't done so before, go down and hit that subscribe button. Right next to it, there'll be a little bell icon. Hit that and you'll get notifications every time I do a video. I'll see you guys down the trail.